Jaguars. Please let the Chargers make the playoffs so they can take on the Jaguars. And when I broadcast the game,
will you say it?
I will. I will. Welcome to Week 17. It is the last week of the regular season Game Theory and Money podcast. If you are just checking in, just in time for the final contests of the 2017 campaign, well, if you're not aware, this podcast revolves around Cynthia Frelund and her predictive analytics and her advanced degrees and her unique simulation to, well, her and her alone. 10,000 simulations per game project what is going to happen this coming week and letting you know whether or not you ought to waste your time on Sunday even paying attention to the games. The NFL playoffs essentially start now, and that's why the schedule looks like what it should look like every Sunday, which is split the darn schedule in half. Give me half the games at 1 p.m. / 10 a.m. Pacific time, and then the other half at 4 p.m. / 1 p.m. Pacific time, instead of just a smattering, 2 or 3. I don't get why this isn't. Huh?
How many quad boxes are we going to get?
That's what I mean. It's going to be great. Like, that's the thing. Red Zone is a fantastic revelation. The advent of Red Zone obviously changed football, but when the afternoon games come around and there's Scott or Andrew and they're just kind of kicking around 2 or 3 games, you're like, well, I'm kind of done with this, you know? This is the way it should be, NFL. Come on. From now on, do this. So let's get right into it, Cynthia. Did I miss anything, by the way?
I don't think so.
All right.
Oh, you did miss that we're not going anywhere. We're still here.
Yeah,
this
for the
isn't
playoffs.
Our last.
No. We'll be here through the playoffs. This is just the last week of the regular season.
We're even going beyond that, just so you know.
We are?
Yeah.
I got to look at my contract. All right, let's get things started because there is the biggest of all the games, because it will likely determine the fate of 3 different teams, is the Titans and the Jag. See, now I get it. The Jaguars.
Listen, Dick Stockton throws us all.
Yeah, they play the Titans. If the Titans win, they're in. It's that simple. If they defeat the Jaguars, and if they win, they will face the Jaguars. Now, if the Titans lose, there is an opportunity for either the Bills or the Chargers to get in. So, Cynthia, why don't you...
And the Jags don't change their seeding
no
matter what.
They are locked into
stuck.
the 3. Yes, they are the 3. So they will play either the Titans, the Bills, or the Chargers based on the outcome of their game against the Titans, based on the outcome of the Chargers versus the Raiders, and the Bills versus the Dolphins. I think the best way maybe to approach this, Cynthia, is who do the Jaguars want to play in week 1 of the playoffs?
So I took a look at all of the different opportunities, and I really don't have strong odds for the Bills to make it past this week. So I think maybe the Bills would be the best option. But between the Titans and the Chargers, which have almost equal odds of making it to the playoffs per my simulations, the Titans are a better, and I mean better if you're a Jags fan.
Yeah, so it's the best matchup.
It's a best matchup for them. But I do want to point out that they have had a 3-week slide, the Titans, but their defense has kind of surprisingly been doing better than we might imagine. So 16 sacks, which is the 3rd most over the past 4 weeks. So 3-week slide, but past 4 games is what I looked at here. They've scored a defensive touchdown, and they've overall for the season, the Titans have given up the 2nd fewest big plays per game. So 4.3 is the average. That's runs of 10 plus, passes of 20 plus. So if we see more turnover-prone Blake Bortles, that could project to be a problem, especially if we're not going to see. It's very unlikely that in this game, the Jags and Titans, we see what the Jags really have cooking up for the playoffs.
If the Titans or the Bills made it, they would be the only team in the postseason with a negative point differential. And I know blowouts play into that for sure, but when you have a 16-game slate,
right,
you ought to have blown somebody out as well in order to balance that out. And that's why when I look at the Bills at a -63, the Titans at a -27, compared to the Chargers, who are a +63, have one of the best defenses.
The Chargers are really scary.
Yeah, I don't know why the Jags wouldn't just lay down and play the game
would they
of,
lie down
hey,
like a cat, like a big cat?
I guess they would lie down, right? Because I got you. But then you would say, are they lying in wait and ready to pounce? So if I were Doug Marrone, I would be content to play my starters the first half and then just say, you know what? We just decided we were going to play it safe and kind of let the Titans beat them and face them next
week. We've
week.
seen Doug Marrone make some interesting calls, though. So he's not one that's easy to chart. So if you look at it, yes, it figures to be a very run-heavy game script. It figures to be let's just keep Blake Bortles in a very safe situation. Let's just try to minimize pressures. Let's try to keep our O-line fresh. Let's try to get out of this one alive in that, in the sense of not losing anyone on offense and especially on defense, and just let our defense have some fun.
So you're saying if you were advising Doug Marrone and Tom Coughlin, and they said, we don't care about the regular season, we care about the playoffs, what should we do? You would advise them to?
I would say heavy rotation of the people who are, so don't make their starters play the full
complement. But I'm just
complement.
saying you would say lose.
I would say, play a very vanilla game script. Don't worry about winning or losing. Don't have it be this ultra competitive, like you're trying to pass in really horrible situations and get Blake Bortles' confidence rattled. Let's keep it simple. Keep the game script simple.
And if you lose,
sub in some people to kind of get keep everybody's legs.
Leonard Fournette.
Right,
just
keep everybody fresh and just rotate more often than normal and be comfortable with whatever happens, but keep the vanilla game script.
And basically, Tennessee is in if they win.
Right.
In every single scenario as I'm going through,
right. The
if
Ravens
they win,
and the Titans
they
both
are
control.
in. Yes,
yep,
exactly. The Ravens, however, for those,
it's a different story, but they can't play the Jags.
There are a couple paths where they lose. So where they miss the playoffs. We'll get into that in a little bit. All right. So there is your Jaguars. Choose your own adventure. Usually I run into the abominable snowman when I choose my own adventure, and it would terrify me as a child.
Turn to page 47.
Right? And then next thing you know, you have to go to bed, and you're freaking out. I thought reading was supposed to be good for me. Rivers in the shotgun. Diagnosing the coverage. Points to DeMario Davis. Takes the snap. Looking to the right. Throwing middle of the end zone. Caught. Touchdown. Rivers to Gates. Let's get to the AFC playoff odds and important games. And as we look at the playoff odds, there's really only one little bit of wiggle room, and that is if the Patriots lose and the Steelers win. The number one seed flips, and we know if there's a rematch between the Steelers and the Patriots, it doesn't matter because the Patriots have beat them 11 out of 13 times. So whatever. But let's go through the rest of those playoff odds, Cynthia. And unless you want to go to the top and talk about Super Bowl odds as well with those top teams.
I think we can save Super Bowl odds for when they become – there's only really one point where the Super Bowl odds will become important, and I'll tell you that in a second. So obviously we're talking about the Ravens, Titans, Chargers, or Bills, and that's the order I have for who makes the playoffs. So Ravens, 95%. They're almost assuredly in. Titans, 43%, and Chargers, 41%. So they're very close. Chargers just looking on the outside, looking in. And what I want to point out in this one, and maybe you can kind of speak to this a little bit, is the difference in Super Bowl odds. So the Chargers have a 1.1% Super Bowl making it odd. That's real technical term right there. But that reflects that they're out of the playoffs in this scenario. Should they somehow have been flip-flopped with Titans and were projected to be in right here, so if they win this game and they end up being in and the Titans lose, those Super Bowl odds jump up to 2.2%.
So it'd be ahead of the Ravens and the Chiefs.
Ahead of the Ravens and the Chiefs, which is just a pretty interesting, something to note. And part of that is because this season, one of the most predictive things has been a consistent pass rush backed up with cornerbacks who are shut down corners, dirt balls for our sake. Doesn't have to be that dramatic, but shut down corners, right? And then you have the consistency in the offensive game. And Phillip Rivers had some up and down games. You can speak to this more when we get to that game.
It's really just Kansas City. In the last 7 weeks, it was one game. And for whatever reason, if you go through his history, he does not play the Chiefs well. No. If they can miss the Chiefs in the playoffs, maybe the Chargers can have themselves.
And Keenan Allen is elite, by the way.
And I wonder how much of that, and I know, or maybe you have plugged it in, I wonder how much of that factors in that they really should have beat the Jaguars. I mean, in that contest, when you have 2 interceptions in the final 2 minutes and you're leading, you should win that game. They had a missed field goal in there, so I don't know if that played into your model.
It does. So when you lose on last-minute weird things, which the Chargers have done and repeatedly, so
for the last decade,
missed field goals or strange outcomes, something that is should you have if the possession arrow, we'll take basketball reference here, but had you had one more possession or had this one fluky thing that has a low probability of happening, had that not happened, or a weird play call by someone else that ultimately changed something in the last few minutes of a game, that does factor in, because that's not very predictive. That's volatility. And that volatility is sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. Unfortunately, this year, the reason that they're on the outside looking is because the volatility went the opposite way in a few games early in the season. But if of the things that are actually predictive, the Chargers are very good at those things.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it when we get to the preview of Oakland and the Chargers. So just to kind of go through the scenarios in the AFC, like we said, the top 4 are locked. 3 and 4 are 100% locked. If New England loses and Pittsburgh wins, the 1 and the 2 flip-flops. The 5 and the 6, though, for the most part, it's all Baltimore in the 5. And I will get into your preview for that particular game against the Bengals. Tennessee and Buffalo have an opportunity to slide into the 5 based on what happens with the Ravens and the Bengals. And then the number 6 is just wide open, and we'll get to that each time when we get into each preview and explain. Actually, you know what? Why don't we just do it now? So
let's do it.
Yeah, so the Pats clinch home field advantage with a win or a Pitt loss. Pitt clinches it with a win and a New England loss. The Ravens simply need to win. Now, they can still clinch with a Buffalo loss, or they can clinch with a Tennessee loss. They can go 9-7 because their conference record is better than the Chargers, so they will be in that way. Their worst-case scenario is they lose, Buffalo wins, Tennessee wins, and then they can get squeezed out. So there is still a path for those wondering, maybe the Ravens don't care. They're already in. They'd rather play the Jags than the Chiefs. No, they cannot play that game. There is a path where they can lose, and because the NFL, again, God bless them for putting all these games at the same time, you don't know what's happening, and you got to play to win. Tennessee, they got to win. Now, they can get in with a Buffalo loss and a Charger loss, but for the most part, they need to win. The Chargers, they need, and this is where it really starts getting convoluted, the Chargers need, if the Buffalo Bills win, they need the Ravens to win. And if Buffalo loses, then it doesn't matter what happens with the Ravens. But the one thing that is constant, they can't have the Titans win. If the Titans win, they are out. And finally, the Bills, they obviously need to win, and they need Baltimore to lose, or they need to win, and the Chargers and Tennessee
You
lose.
did that masterfully.
Hey, I've been projecting it for the last 3 weeks because the Chargers have got these wacky scenarios to keep their season. Actually, the last 2 weeks since they lost to the Chiefs. So, is that it?
All right. I'm in awe. That was incredible.
It's weeks, and it's maybe a little bit of an 8. All right, let's get to who is in, who is out. All the late games that have these playoff implications. We gave you a little bit of a preview, but why not focus on the big one, because it really is kind of the key to the 5 and the 6 seed in the AFC, and that is Jaguars versus the Titans. What do you got?
With a whopping 51.7 confidence, I have Tennessee coming out on top 22-21.
Now, how do you run the simulations percentage of, I guess, simulations with starters, without starters, with starters for a half? How did you balance it all out?
So I ran it with a lot of different variables. So, for example, if they play all their starters, that's kind of one sensitivity of it. And if they don't play any, and if potential, like kind of in between this sort of, what have the game plan for the past 4 weeks? What have we seen over the past 4 weeks? What have we seen over the past season? And kind of what rotations have we seen when they've been winning or when they've been losing? These kind of so basically all of the different matchups you've seen, all of the different player personnel configurations on the field, kind of run them in a percentage that is the best guess based on Doug Marone's play calling ability or play calling tendencies in the past, and the defensive coordinator too.
Do you remember what happens if in fact they play all of their starters like it is a regular game that they need to win? Because you think back to Tom Coughlin last year, and he just went through there, or 2 years ago, he went through that, or whatever it was when they played a meaningless game. They were already in the playoffs. He played all of his starters in Week 17 and said he just believes, and he seems like that kind of guy, that the integrity of the game is important and that he was going to play his guys. So let's just assume that's the path they take, and we take Marone at his word.
We saw last week that the Jags, their defensive pressure rate was cut in half. They actually moved from second highest rate to third highest rate just from that San Francisco game alone. They couldn't get consistent pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo. We also saw them struggle blitzing, which is something we didn't see them do for the majority of the season. I mostly project them, quote, getting that right, like working that out, getting back to their, like use it as a way to, not have their last time on the field competitively be this situation where they weren't able to do the things that their defense is able to do. So if they were to play all of their starters like a regular game, I have the Jags coming out on top. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 24, 19, 18,
seems about right.
Like that.
So a pretty good size gap.
A pretty good size gap
in your simulation.
Yep. But the point is I do think they're going to kind of get right. The pressure does flag as something they need to, it was one game, so it's fluky, but let's get it back to the normal Jags defense, because they need that defense in order to buttress their offense.
And the defense, there's a reason why they're called Saxonville. So, yes, it took a 1 week hiatus against Jimmy Garoppolo, who hung a 40 spot on him.
Yep.
But Marcus Mariota has not been – this has been a bad year for him.
It has. I mean, look at his numbers against the blitz, right? 4th worst passer rating whenever an opposing team has rushed 5 or more. You know who's better than that? Jay Cutler.
Oh, Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
Is better or worse?
Better.
Okay.
The only people worse are Kaiser, Simeon, and Hundley.
That's pretty bad company.
Yeah, that's not ideal at all.
And the thing about the Jags is they don't have to rush 5.
No.
They get there in 4. I mean, they get there in bunches with 4. With foul, I mean, whether it's Fowler or Ngakoue or Campbell or Jack, I mean, they get it from all angles.
The low-key underrated thing about Calais Campbell that I would really love to point out is that in addition to being great with it, so we see him sack the quarterback. So you think passing down, there comes Calais Campbell, 14.5 sacks, tied for 2nd in the NFL. But I want to include his run stops on that. So if you look at like kind of his ability to be disruptive both in the passing and the running game, he's top 6 if you include run stops into that number. So like that's a really nice additional feature.
He's always been
of
great.
The Calais Campbell model.
Yeah, I mean he has always been great in that facet of the game. He just the thing with Campbell is we just have never seen these sack numbers out of him. He's always been a sound, all around, well-rounded defensive end, no question. And this year the sacks popped.
Right. It helps when you have help.
Right. Yes. When you have Ngakoue and Jackson and Fowler and everything else happening on that defense.
Yeah. My other note about Marcus Mariota, especially with that running, like we used to see Marcus Mariota run and scramble more often, and that's why the Calais Campbell note popped up. But I want to point out his number against pressure. So 9th lowest passer rating every time he's been pressured for the entire season. That's not great. It's below average. It's 59.9, so about 60 passer rating. The NFL average is 53. You have to remember, though, average includes like some people who are very bad at it. And so that his number being closer to that number is like that's just not what we've seen from Marcus Mariota. Like it's surprising.
I would love to pick the Jaguars because I would love to go back to Jacksonville. I had such a grand time when we were there for a weekend in the regular season going to Dave & Buster's because it was the only thing that was open by the hotel.
What about Bennigan's? Do they still have Bennigan's down there?
No Bennigan's, just Dave & Buster's. I don't even know if Bennigan's still exists.
Really?
I mean, that was like
we had one at home, and I like
that's
really
what I mean.
liked
It was the fake ID hangout in Chicago when I was growing up. But I want to go back and see my friends at Topgolf.
I love Topgolf.
Yeah, Jacksonville Topgolf is perhaps the finest Topgolf.
Maybe if I'm ever in Jacksonville, they'll invite me to Topgolf.
And I would,
I'll go there.
Maybe you go preview this playoff game.
Totally.
But I get the sense that, as Bill and Ted once said, something's afoot at the Circle K, and the Circle K is Nashville, Tennessee, and the Jaguars would much rather face the Titans, so I'm going to pick the Titans to win this one. All right, let's go Bills-Dolphins. Winner score.
With a whopping 50.4% confidence, I have the Dolphins coming out on top, 23-22. It's very hard to – so both the AFC did this weird thing. The AFC East is like week on, week off, week on, week off. So you see like, Bills play the Pats, then they have a week off, then they play them again. Then they do the same thing with the Dolphins. So they face each other very closely. Again, the rematch is like 2 or 3 weeks apart at the most. So one of the things that flags in this is that the Bills, so first of all, they have the number 32 passing offense. So that's troubling, especially considering that, you've seen an uptick in the cornerback play by the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins cornerback play is actually in some ways a measuring like passer rating over the past 4 weeks, like one of the top 6 or 5. So that's a pretty big difference, right? Okay. The other thing is that the Bills defense is the lowest pressure percentage in the NFL for the season, under 6%. Last week we saw against the Patriots, that number dipped under 2%. They're just not bringing pressure. So Jay Cutler can do well when he's not pressured. Kenyon Drake, I'm going to call him a change of direction back, not a change of speed back, because nobody runs around left, right. I try to track him on the field.
Right.
Like, where are you going? Where are you?
He's been great.
Yeah, and so and the Bills have the number 30 rushing defense. So if you look at kind of recent strengths versus recent strengths and weaknesses versus weaknesses, it seems to me like, especially given that they're playing in Miami, potentially the climate change isn't going to work for in their favor. No snow in this one, or else that would be very unlikely, right? So to me, that kind of projects for maybe this is the time Jay Cutler throws for 300 yards and we see him say farewell to.
It'd be very Jay Cutler of him.
Right, like he hasn't thrown for 300 all year. So
I guess this is where the gut thing or the non-analytic observation comes in. I don't like that the Bills have been kind of moaning about that call. It sucks. They got burned, no doubt about it. But, man, have they spent a lot of time. And it almost It almost reminds me of, you made a basketball analogy, I'll make the baseball analogy. It almost reminds me of the Bartman game.
Yeah.
Where, okay, it's Game 6. You are still tied. You still have a Game 7 at Wrigley Field, yet here is this team that is focused on this singular event that they feel as though cheated them out of the postseason. The Bills have kind of been doing that. Like, hey, this Kelvin Benjamin touchdown, we would have been up by a touchdown, going into half, have our momentum, we win our 9th game, we're ready to break this 17-year playoff drought. And, man, did we we were just on the wrong end of it. And it's been so much that's the one thing that has me leaning in the Dolphins' direction, that they just feel like that was their shot and they blew it. At the same time, LaShawn McCoy has been pretty darn good as of late. And Tyrod went
darn good, meaning like the number 3 in terms of percentage of team scrimmage yards for the year, and like influencing game outcomes.
He's got his shake back, and he is one of the most elusive, slippery, hard to bring down backs. And that combined, I know you mentioned and everybody knocks Tyrod for the lack of deep passes. The guy's accurate. He's hard to bring down. I mean, I have no question in my mind he's going to be a starting quarterback somewhere next year, whether that be with the Bills or somewhere else. And he's been playing better as of late. I just think they're better than the Dolphins. I feel, and because they have something to play for, I'm taking the Bills. You know what? This was the Bills' show of record 6, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, when people weren't into them yet. So I'm gonna keep our Bills. I mean, you have to pay attention to your simulations. I don't. Right. So I'm taking the Bills, darn it.
One thing that I think is kind of a cool thing for Bills fans and, people who play in leagues where you can stash people for next year if you can get multiple people. One that might be like a sneaky upside guy next year is Deontay Thompson, the wide receiver. The last 25 of his 25 catchable passes, he caught. I mean, it's pretty cool
25
considering.
For 25.
Right. There hasn't been many bright spots in this passing offense for Buffalo this season, but maybe Deontay Thompson is one who next year, I mean, obviously we'd have no idea the configuration of a team. We have no, these are speculation based on performance, but it seems like Deontay Thompson showed us something there.
By the way, just speaking of the obvious turnovers, when the Bills don't turn the ball over, they win. And when you look at their losses, even their turn, and they do take care of the ball. When you look at their losses, their turnover differential is a -6. They turn the ball over 6 times against the Chargers. Right. So if you just take out that one game where Nathan Peterman played for a half, it's a team that really takes care of the football. And when they do that, they win games. So
the Dolphins are number 32 on third down. So that's another. I mean, you're hitting on good things. That's why. Right. I mean, obviously, 50.4% confidence is really strong confidence. Oh, wait a minute.
No, it's a 50-50 game. I'll take the Bills. You take the numbers. Take the Dolphins. Let's go Bengals. Ravens. This one should be easy.
This one is easy. 75.9% confidence that the Baltimore Ravens come out on top. The projected score is 25-16.
That's a big number for the simulation, 9 points, yes.
It sure is.
So you're not buying the Bengals after they wrecked the Lions last week, huh? They're not playing for old Marv, sending them out the right way.
Dear William Jackson, thank you for being a dirtball against the Lions. Merry Christmas to me, a Lions fan.
There you go.
He was great. Bengals cornerback.
Inevitable.
I mean, look, we were talking about it earlier, and I can't believe you guys didn't know this nickname, the Lie Downs.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Anyways, so.
Worst possible time. Just to break your heart on the holidays.
Correct. And listen, I've been living with it now for however many years I've been alive. So exactly. Baltimore's defense is the main predictor of success, both in this matchup and going forward. I want to point out rookie corner Marlon Humphrey. He actually has the 7th best passer rating allowed, so 7th lowest passer rating allowed, which is hilarious because you know who's number 8? Jimmy Smith, the guy who he replaced. It's kind of cool that he can step into this role. He's seen a lot more targets because Jimmy Smith is a shutdown corner, so the matchups are, obviously a little bit different, but Marlon Humphrey has been excellent. I'm a big fan of that. The biggest problem in this matchup is going to be left tackle for the Bengals, Clint Bowling. It's a bad pass rushing matchup there. That left tackle has been a really hard situation for Andy Dalton to overcome this season.
I'm looking at the playoff scenarios right now. There are, and all you need is one, right?
All you need is one.
There are 2 different scenarios where the Ravens miss out on the playoffs altogether. If, in fact, they lose, the Titans win, and Buffalo wins, they are out. And if, in fact, they lose, that's what it is. If they lose Tennessee and Buffalo win, they're out. So they have to win this game. Mm-hmm. So as much as people want to say, the Bengals are playing for Marv, they're going to close strong, they are nowhere near the team that the Ravens are, specifically when that offense has to go up against one of the best defenses.
And if you're looking for a defense, I mean, look, they have 33 takeaways. That's the most in the NFL. Plus 17 turnover differential, also number 1 in the NFL. It's very rare that the leader in turnover differential doesn't make the playoffs. It's like almost never happens.
Yeah, and post-bye, I'm just looking at this number now. This offense has been pretty good. They're scoring 30 points per game in their last 5 games.
Forget.
So, yeah, people have not been paying attention there.
And you know who's doubled his deep ball passing receptions?
I feel like there's only one receptions.
Or how many people actually caught them?
Who's that?
That'd be Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I thought you meant
no,
I was like, well, I think it's kind of obvious because I don't know if anybody else is running out there throwing the deep ball. It's a halfback option, and it's Alex Collins throwing them downfield.
Right.
I mean, they're scoring 30 points per game in their last 5.
Speaking of Alex Collins, I have a great projection. So this week, I try to look for people who have 80 or more scrimmage yards. So for running backs, obviously, it's combined rushing and receiving, and good touchdown odds. And Alex Collins comes up on my model based on that if you're looking for someone to play in fantasy.
Yeah, who knew that the Seahawks back should have been the one that they didn't cut? I'm with you. I'll go Ravens. That's an easy one. They likely will find themselves, well, they will. They win. They'll be the number 5, and they will take on the Chiefs, and that is going to be a heck of a game. That offense versus that defense at Arrowhead in January is going to be a
it's going to be
lot of fun.
Cold.
All right, let's go Raiders-Chargers.
With 70.5% confidence, I have the Chargers coming out on top 26-19. You happy with that?
Yeah. I like it. Hey, it's Raider week. It's knowing what I have to walk into on Sunday. I like it. That's for certain. Hashtag Raider week.
Hashtag Raider week. Okay, so Melvin Gordon and Keenan Allen both come up. Remember I told you my 80 plus scrimmage yards people, both of them. The elite Keenan Allen and Melvin Gordon. So
and Melvin, by the way, with that high ankle sprain.
He's probable, so be
yesterday.
careful, but I think it's okay.
Still walking around protecting it, but said no question. He is going to go, and the fact that they didn't sign anyone or they haven't elevated Russell Hansbrough off the practice squad,
signing,
he's going to play.
I want to ask you about Bosa's lack of sacks for the past couple weeks. Do you think that's
troubling.
It's been troubling?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's so I went back and watched all of it, and I'm curious. I mean, you obviously have the eagle eye. You are literally the mouthpiece that I listen to when I rewatch all of this. So, I mean, do you think it's just more like a facet of what?
He's getting doubled, yeah. I mean, they're sending a tight end over there, but he was fighting through those at the start of the season, yes. He was shaking them off. He was getting his sacks. What I noticed they did against the Jets is their greatest success was when Ingram lined up next to him. And either Bosa played out wide or Ingram came outside of him. They were running stunts. He was running stunts inside with the tackle that he was shaded to. And he was effective. I mean, even though he didn't have a sack, he did have the hurries.
Yes.
The unnecessary roughness penalty he got was absolute BS. And I know, whatever, you may say I'm biased, but, man, he has had, and I think it's because he's so big and so violent in the way he
his burst
attacks.
Is crazy.
Exactly. That the referees just inherently throw the flag. But, I mean, he hit Petty while he was still in his throwing motion, and he was tagged for unnecessary roughness, and they said it was something with a shoulder dip or what. The man is 6'4", 300 pounds, and runs like a 4.4 40. What do you expect it to look like when he hits a quarterback? But I think the production is a little bit disconcerting. I do, and I think that's something that Gift Smith is trying to figure out.
I think this is a get-right game against that depleted O-line, though, and I think we see a Bosa, maybe even multiple sack day.
The one thing the Raiders did against them, I mean, it wasn't even a 3-step drop. It was a step and a half, and bang, that ball was gone for Derek Carr. So I would be very surprised if that wasn't the game plan again.
Also, Phillip Rivers with a 300 yards average over, the past 7 games. That's something to plug into this game if you're looking for a fantasy quarterback.
And for people that are just kind of recency bias saying, well, he didn't have a good game against the Jets, that was by design. I mean, I have never seen Phillip, give up more plays just knowing that his defense was there and the running game was there, and he was not going to give that team a short field. If he put the ball, give them an opportunity to have a turnover on a scoring end of the field. He still threw for 290 and a good completion percentage, but he was throwing balls away a lot, easily more than any other game.
Casey Hayward pick, yes or no? In this one?
Yeah, I think so, because Carr is not good he has not been good under pressure. And that was always kind of the knock on him at Fresno State is if you got him off his spot, if you can get that pocket muddy, it got a little
offensive
shaky.
Coordinator has not done as good of a job this season at creating opportunities for Carr to succeed as in the past.
He likely will end up as the scapegoat.
If I were consulting for the Raiders, I mean, obviously the one thing in the offseason they need to address is turnovers, and the 26 giveaways and 14 takeaways is so much different. That's minus 12. Last year they were plus 16, 14 giveaways, 30 takeaways.
They won a lot of weird games last year.
But it doesn't matter. Like,
you know what I mean? Right. Like if you I just think back to the Charger game last year when it was a botched snap on a field goal that they would have lost. I mean, they had like 3 or 4, maybe even more of those games that had weird endings.
Correct, but remember you have to kind of throw out the weird endings. But things like turnover differential and especially, takeaways versus especially giveaways in this offense when you have a great O-line like they have, that's really a big problem.
Yeah. Well, I guess it wouldn't matter. They need the Titans to lose. But Raider week, send those folks home sad because I've called a Raider-Charger game in San Diego before, and my goodness.
2nd and 7. Prescott is looking to throw, has all kinds of time. Now throws it over the head. It's intercepted. Near side 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Seahawks. Justin Coleman picks it off on the far side and runs untouched. A flag is down for, I think, excessive celebration, but a 33-yard interception return for a touchdown. Justin Coleman, and the Seahawks take the lead 13-9.
Well, you hear the Dak Prescott play there. We now get into the NFC playoff odds and important games. That pick means the Seahawks still have a chance. Everything else is set 1 through 5. It's just that number 6 spot, Cynthia, that is up for grabs.
Well, it's not set in the order, but the
as far as participants, yes.
Right. So the Falcons or Seahawks are really fighting for that last wild card spot. I have the Falcons making it, and I also have the Falcons with a decent Super Bowl odds. However, should the Seahawks win their game, should the scenario flip, the Seahawks actually they would have better Super Bowl odds than what's reflected here. So it's under 1%, but you have to remember that's because they're outside of looking in.
So and this is why this bodes well for the Seahawks, right? So the Seahawks obviously have to win. They have to beat the Cardinals, which I think we all figure they will.
Math loves it.
We'll get into that. They also need the Falcons to lose. The good news for the Seahawks, unlike the Chargers and the Jags versus Titans, Panthers have a lot of motivation. They can move all the way up to the number 2 spot. The Panthers can clinch the NFC South with a win and a Saints loss, and they can clinch a bye with a win and a loss by the Saints and a loss by the Vikings and a loss by the Rams. Now, remember, the Rams are sitting starters, so you feel pretty good about the way the 49ers have been playing and Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan finishing this season strong. No Todd Gurley, no Jared Goff in that one. Minnesota this week obviously has something to play for. They, can lose the first round bye if they lose. So they have motivation, and obviously the Saints have motivation because they would rather be at home for a wild card game as opposed to on the road. So there's kind of your scenarios of how that number 6 seed can play out and why, with the Falcons needing to lose for the Seahawks to get in, the Panthers have a lot to play for. So I guess with that, unless you want to go through Super Bowl odds, Let's get into it. Who's in, who's out? Panthers versus Falcons. What do we got?
The model thinks this one's very close. 51.4% confidence that Carolina will come out on top. 24-23. That's about as close. Well, I guess.
Well, no, we had a 50.4.
We did. We had the Miami and Bills.
But still, very tight.
It's very tight. So if you look to see, let's start just based on the Panthers defense because they blitz the most in the NFL, 42.4% of the time. 11 takeaways. Okay, so just under blitz conditions, 11 takeaways occurred during that. 49 quarterback hits. That's number 3, and 33% on third down when they blitz. So that's kind of been one of the ways that they've been getting teams off the field, keeping their offense on the field by their defense being so efficient. The problem is they've been giving up now big plays when they've blitzed in the past 4 games. So blitzing's been their staple. They've done it most in the NFL. And recently, people have been doing big plays to get around it. And we do know that there is a big play-making team that have inconsistent results. That would be Matt Ryan with Julio Jones or Mohamed Sanu even in earlier games. We've seen inconsistent results from Matt Ryan and company on offense. So realistically, in this one, it's very interesting. So if you look to see Week 9 when Carolina won 20-17, look at who Julio Jones lined up with. It's James Bradbury. And it was not Julio Jones didn't, it wasn't
he hasn't been that good all season.
But he's had that moment.
He obviously attracts a lot of attention. But
right.
outside of his 253-yard game against Tampa, it's been pretty okay.
Man.
It has not been Julio Jones elite. I'm better than Calvin Johnson ever was as a big, fast, super athletic wide receiver. I mean, that just hasn't been there this year.
However, the problem is big players, sometimes in big games, in big situations, I would imagine Dan Quinn figures out a way in this one to get Julio Jones a little bit more involved. Because, I mean, if you're going to throw the ball to someone, wouldn't you rather it be 50-50 ball, turns into an 80-20 ball?
And for those, by the way,
that I hate.
that are those that are saying, well, it's at home. I mean, it's different. It's Matt Ryan. It's on the turf. It's all that speed. They have not been good at home this year. I mean, they're 4-3 at home.
I'd care more about the fact that he's been good against the blitz, and he has big plays when he's been blitzed, and that's what the Carolina Panthers are probably going to come with because that's what they've done most often. Like that's more predictive to me, like how he matches up in situations he's likely to see, as opposed to the opposite. Also, want to point out with the Panthers defense. Top 7 in pressure percentage. K1 Short, shout out. He doesn't get much love, I don't think.
No, he doesn't.
I don't think he does, but he deserves it. He
Sure.
definitely does. So that's going to be an interesting problem between him and Luke Kuechly to establish the run for the Falcons. So Devontae Freeman, like Tevin Coleman, that's one of the ways that the Falcons really operate best. So, and also both of those things taken together drive my projection for Matt Ryan of 290, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. However, one of those touchdowns is likely to go to Julio Jones.
We'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take the Falcons. I'm
Okay.
with you. I think there is something about, big players, big games. There's so much talent on that Falcons team on both sides of the ball, and it's been a weird season. I just kind of get the feeling that, get it together here, and I think they'll have another NFC South likely opponent in the first round of the playoffs, and they'll have that, proverbial, well, it's not proverbial, but it's hard to beat a team three times.
That's one of the other things that I hate.
We're going to hear it.
My other thing, though, the one thing that flags as interesting is that the Panthers have been, quote, doing things improbably and still winning.
Yeah, I mean, Cam's had bad games, and they've won.
And
he's had to carry the team, and
literally.
the defense has been bad, and they've won.
Right.
I mean,
so that's even last week. So if you look at what happened against Tampa Bay, they only averaged 3.7 yards per rush. That's not
no.
Helpful
Cam
at all.
did not have a good game.
No, they still managed to win.
It's the defense.
Right.
And I guess maybe
obviously
that's
6 sacks, tons of pressure, special teams touchdown. Those things all help.
So maybe I'm going to change because that's usually the sign of a really good team
is
whatever
crap happens and then you overcome it. And
whatever unit has to pick up the slack.
This. Yeah, and that also makes them more dangerous in the Super Bowl. All
right, I've changed my mind. I'm taking the Panthers. I'm shifting. I'm going to the Panthers. All right. The impact of that game, the outcome of that game, should the Panthers win, then plays into our next preview, which is, can we get the Seahawks into the playoffs? Cardinals-Seahawks winner score.
With 68.5% confidence, the Seahawks come out on top. Projected score of 25-17.
You know what? Scratch it out, Gennaro. I'm going back. I'm going to the Falcons, and here's why. Before we move on. I know you want me to move on. Just hear me out. Here's the way this works, right? How do you rank? Because you look at the NFC. It's wide open. Right? You got Nick Foles quarterbacking the Eagles. Are we really buying Case Keenum and the Vikings no matter how good that defense is? I mean, Dalvin Cook is down. They're leaning on Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon. That's not that dumb. I mean, the Panthers are good. The Saints are good. But what if the way to truly expunge a 28-3 lead from your history is to sneak in as the 6 and make a run all the way back to the big game as the Falcons? I'm taking the Falcons. All right. Right? That's the narrative that we want.
I'm not going to lie.
28-3, 28 to Shmee. We're coming into the playoffs as the 6th seed, and we're taking it all the way to Minnesota. That's right. I'm embodying my Dan Quinn right now. That's what, or maybe I'm Arthur. I'm more like Arthur Blank.
So
I'm not a football guy.
I'm going to tell you my Dan Quinn story
Please.
very, very quickly.
Please.
I felt really lucky when I was standing on the field ahead of the Super Bowl. I literally cried. I felt very grateful, and I was holding shoes in my hands. And I have one pair of fancy shoes that have red bottoms and they're black on the top.
Tiny.
I have
shoes.
tiny fancy shoes because I have really small feet.
Baby feet. When we say baby feet, Cynthia still shops in the kids section for shoes. I'm not kidding.
No, it's actually very true. I can wear a kid size 4.
See?
Anyways, long story short, I'm holding these shoes and I have tears coming down my eyes and I'm like filled with gratitude. And Dan Quinn, who's like very military-like, comes walking down the tunnel and I'm like embarrassed and like whatever. I'm like, oh, congratulations on making it. It's nice. He goes, Cynthia, I'm glad to see you have the right color shoes on.
Now, this was last Super Bowl?
Yeah, right at the Super Bowl. I was like...
Oh, at the beginning?
Right before.
I was going to say.
No, before.
If I saw him coming at me after the game, I'd just run.
No, this was before. This was before the
you.
pregame show, before anything. I was having like a very nice
By the way,
feeling.
in the world of the media, Cynthia, it was a poor choice by you. You should have worn a neutral color. Can't wear a team color.
The bottom of my shoes.
You're working.
The Patriots have red in their colors
Doesn't
too.
Matter.
And it was the bottom of my shoes.
Doesn't matter. You should have worn all green.
These is bloody shoes.
You should have worn, yes. All right, so Cardinals Seahawks. Now that I've wasted our time taking us on a tangent. Let's go.
Okay, so Seahawks, they've played 245 plays under pressure. That'd be Russell Wilson. That's more than 40 from the next closest person, which, by the way, Texans, then Browns. I mean, that's worse than it's just amazing to me that it's been that bad, and they've sustained being that bad. They haven't figured out a way to, prevent Russell Wilson from being under pressure. 34 big plays, which is 10 more from the next closest. Been sacked 40 times. That's the 11th most. And the Arizona defense, most points per game allowed when they bring pressure. So even if Arizona brings pressure, there's a good chance Russell Wilson will overcome it with his big plays, his ability to get out of pressure. Every time they brought pressure, they've allowed opposing teams to score 4.4 points. That's the most of that. That's crazy.
What I have to add to this is, for shame on all of you folks that are going hard after the Cards and Bruce Arians. When you think, last season we were having this conversation that we're having about Russell Wilson right now, about David Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of the offense he was, the amount of touches, the amount of yards,
yes.
the amount of receiving
yes.
yards, the amount of yards. Like, he was Russell Wilson last year. Like, my God, this David Johnson is remarkable. The amount of offense that he produces for this team. They lost him in the first quarter of the first game. Carson Palmer goes down. The team is 7-8. They have a chance to finish at 8-8 without David Johnson, without Carson Palmer, and everyone's talking about running Bruce Arians out of town.
First of all, the best part about Bruce Arians is that him and his grandson have matching hats. That's the best part.
I was thinking other things, but okay.
The second part is that he's an awesome coach, and this is a very underrated situation. You lose David Johnson. Imagine if you lost Todd Gurley. That's
right.
The kind of production we're talking about, or Lev Bell, someone like that. This is a big deal. But you still have Larry Fitzgerald, who's one of those people that is flagged in my model as a potential that you should play in fantasy if you're looking for that with the 80+ and a touchdown.
He can't retire. He can't. He's too good.
He's too tight.
Look at last week. The guy had a huge game last week again.
Our next-gen stats people provided me with this tight window catches. So Larry Fitzgerald leads the league in tight window catches, very close. So I can't remember the exact amount of, this. It's 2 feet or something less, very close. And
2 inches.
2 inches. Faces the Seahawks defense that's allowed the most tight window catches in the league this year. 47. So that could be a good predictor for Larry Fitzgerald's success here. And, of course, you have to always talk about Russell Wilson outside the tackle box. This is I feel like I think I've said this on repeat
Please.
A million times.
Say it again.
Anyways, the most throws outside the tackle box, 25%. This is a problem, especially for the Cardinals in this situation. They've allowed the second highest passer rating on throws outside the tackle box. Is that really surprising?
No. Who's
the
Cardinals quarterback, by the way?
I think it's Drew Stanton.
Where did he go to school?
Michigan State.
There you go. Just wanted to let you
I think
squeeze
he's a
that in
Rick's
there.
guy. Whereas Kirk Cousins, the land shark
Is
guy, Rick's guy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a?
Well, I didn't go to Michigan. I went there when I was like in high school.
That's
still,
right.
But
You're
and
a
I
Benny
never
Mulligan's
underage.
guy.
I never underage went to anywhere except for
Sure.
Harper's and B-Dubs.
And Bennigan's.
And Bennigan's.
All right. So there we go. Cards. See, I'll take the Seahawks. Their hearts will be broken because Atlanta has to make the Super Bowl. All right, let's get through the other games that have much less impact. We get started with the Saints and the Bucs. And I should say that there is no impact here because the Saints can move all the way from the number 5 to the number 3. So they could be a road team as a wild card, having to travel to Carolina or to Los Angeles, and they can host a wild card game, likely against Carolina. If they win, that's essentially what their fate will be as long as Carolina loses, is they will win the division and they will host a wild card game at the Superdome, and we know how much more effective they are in that venue than anywhere else. So a lot of motivation here for the Saints.
71.5% confidence as the Saints come out on top 28-21. I've said a lot of nice things about the Saints, and I'm sure I'll have to say a lot more for the playoffs, so I'm going to go Bucs here. I'm going to tell you one positive for the Bucs. So Jameis Winston, he's had an 80 passer rating for the season before 2 weeks ago. In the past 2 weeks, he's actually had almost a 150 passer rating when he's faced the blitz, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. There's some improvement right there for Jameis. I'm trying to find something good.
That's fine. And again, the Saints
blitz
South.
fourth most often too, so maybe that's something interesting there.
Yeah, I mean, I get it that I guess it really doesn't matter when you're in the wild card round. I believe the Superdome, having done games, they're big games, and actually here I say this, and it was a game they lost that would have won them the division. They lost to it. Remember when the NFC South was like a 7-9 team?
Yeah.
I called that game against the Falcons. It's, as much credit as Seattle and Arrowhead get, Superdome's right there. I mean, it is so loud. It is such an intimidating environment.
I went to the Final Four there in basketball.
Yeah,
Random.
so you got to believe the Saints are supremely motivated to get that 3 seed, and they get it simply by winning. All right, Browns-Steelers.
Okay, 87.4% confidence that the Steelers come out on top 31-16.
Congratulations, Hugh. What a coaching job you've done.
Okay, so we had a big talk in this.
Why don't you give me another 10-minute speech? Or since you're 0-15, you can just be quiet. You can just have a 3-minute press conference and just go back to your office instead of a 10-minute press conference after every loss when you're 0-12 and 0-13 and 0-14. Yes, we don't care about your offensive philosophy when you've won 1 game in 2 seasons. Sorry. Can't take you, Jack. It's ridiculous. I'm going to jump in Lake Erie. Congratulations. Don't care. You're 0-15.
Jump in Lake Erie.
It's enough.
Okay. So
yeah, sorry. All right, Browns, so Steelers.
Okay, I just want to say we did do a little, there's all these questions. A big question I get, even in our production meeting we talked about it. How hard is it to be 0-16? So it hasn't happened very often. Obviously, the Lions is the one that we know. But the thing that is a predictor for this season and what happened this season that makes this more likely, I guess, than not is when things started to, they didn't change things that weren't working. So typically, teams will make adjustments to make things simpler or really rely on a run game and just change the way that their tight ends play in order to create better opportunities for their running backs, or add an extra O lineman or add something to make a difference. And they haven't changed their play calling very much. So it's kind of like, what's the adage where you're the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again
and expecting a different result.
So they kind of did that, a lot.
Sounds right.
It is right.
Sounds about right.
And that's why people could figure it out. Their defense isn't as bad as it seems given their record, especially their run defense. They have some positives there for sure, but in terms of offense, keeping Deshaun Kaiser in those same situations where he's going to set records for poor play, that's on the coach too.
You got a ton of picks. Hit the reset button. Stop trading away quarterbacks. Stop it.
Also, that is not analytics. Let me be clear.
What do you mean?
When people are always they're doing analytics because they're taking as many picks in the draft as possible, and that's not my definition. It's not I don't think most people in this profession who do it that's not yes, adding more draft picks gives you more options and changes your
more swings.
It takes more swings at it. The problem is you have to have a cohesive strategy in order to apply those swings.
Well,
so sometimes trading up and trading up to get someone.
Paul DePodesta, who said that Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz were not their type of quarterbacks.
So I don't know anything about that, but I do know that it's not.
That's all I'm saying. When you make that statement, you better be right, and you're wrong.
Right. Not merely hoarding picks is not an analytics thing. I get mad about this because people are like, oh, analytics failed. I'm like, no, they have an organizational problem that failed.
The Browns? How dare you say that? Jets, Patriots.
New England comes out on top, 79% confidence, and the projected score is 31-17. There are 2 31s in a row. My model hates 30. So 2 31s in a row, that is a big one.
The Patriots still need to win to get home field, so they are going to play. I have not seen a quarterback as inaccurate as Bryce Petty last week in calling the game against the Chargers since I called a Tim Tebow game.
Bilal Powell is kind of a bright spot.
Bilal Powell was great last week.
Could be a bright spot in this
one. And I would assume he'll be great again this week. He's a good back.
Yeah.
He's a very good back. Once he gets to that second level, he's got a little bit more wiggle than people may recognize. He's a
absolutely.
good back.
He forces missed tackle at a pretty high rate. Our research department, this is a really fun stat if you're a Pats fan, and I know we have a ton of them, right?
I'll be the judge of that.
Okay, 23 scrimmage yards is all it will take for Dion Lewis if he gets 23 more scrimmage yards. Patriots will do something that they've never done in the Tom Brady era or in their franchise history. They will have 3 players with 1,000+ scrimmage yards in the same season.
I'm thinking.
They've never done it.
So you got Deion Branch. You got
Dion Lewis.
No. I'm thinking of that season. Yeah, I guess you're right. They didn't have Gronk yet, but they had. So it would have been what? Who would their tight end have been? Ben Watson? It would have been Watson. Because I'm thinking of the Corey Dillon year, right? Mm-hmm. When they had Corey, Branch, and anyway. All right.
Yeah.
Hey,
so, and by the
they're
way,
the stat
Brandon
guys.
Cooks,
I'm not.
Rob Gronkowski,
That's
Brandon
great.
Cooks, obviously. So that's a fun
and
one.
all of them
so
missed considerable amount
23
of time.
scrimmage yards.
Save Cooks.
Right. And Lewis, by the way, forces missed tackle rate. Top 3 in the NFL. That's very predictive going forward for the playoffs.
The Eagles are locked into the number 1. They have
Lock
nothing to play for. However, I would assume after last week's mess with Nick Foles,
right.
They need him to get right. Winner score.
51.1% confidence that the Eagles come out on top, and the projected score is 26-25. That's a lot of points. Okay, so, obviously when you look to see what happened, it's all about, to me, third down. Like, let's just talk about third down. So what's Nick Foles done different on third down than Carson Wentz? So Carson Wentz himself on third down has, like, a quarterback accuracy rating. So, like, if the quarterback runs, passes, or, rushes himself or passes for a third down, like, he's 49%. So at almost half the time, then Carson Wentz would extend plays, make it happen. Whereas Nick Foles, that's down to, like, 27.1, 28%. So sub 30%. That's a that
huge
right there.
drop.
That right there is, like, let's just leave that there, and that's what you need to know. That's the biggest difference. I do want to point out that the defense last week is also something that probably maybe a bit of a get-right game for the defense, too. Looked a little bit. I mean, there were some injuries. Brandon Graham, that's a big one. Just see what happens here. Let's just look to see kind of keep it healthy. It's outside. It could be cold in the Lincoln Financial, whatever. So that's something I'm going to be looking right at their defense.
Des Bryant saying he's not taking a pay cut. Jerry Jones having to defend Jason Garrett again. Earl Thomas wants to be in. There's just, the Cowboys drama has returned the final 2 weeks.
Wait, there's drama in Dallas?
Season. Yeah, exactly. They're the Lakers. It's the Yankees. It's the Cowboys. It's the Lakers. It's what happens.
More drama.
Every single season.
Giants or Cowboys?
Oh, Cowboys.
You think so?
Yeah.
There's a lot of drama at the Giants, though.
There's drama, but at the same time, it was self-inflicted drama, with Ben McAdoo and the fact that the team, you looked at that offensive line going into the season. They had no running game.
Well, I just mean like the Eli Apple and the all that crap
I guess
going on.
That's a good point.
That's
fair.
Just different
Odell
drama.
is drama in and of himself. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You know what? 50-50 drama. There we go. New York and Dallas. Let's get to the game I've been staring at. Jimmy Garoppolo.
I love it.
Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo. Rescuing a 49ers franchise that has been dormant since Jim Harbaugh left. It is remarkable what happens when you have a capable – I mean, look, Kyle Shanahan, there's a reason why he is regarded as one of the brightest offensive minds in the NFL. It's clear. The guy's got a quarterback. Look what happens. They're undefeated since he has a legitimate quarterback, and what a bright future the 49ers now have thanks to, for whatever reason you think they made the deal. Maybe the agent wanted a little bit of a favor. He's Brady's agent. They've been doing favors for Bill forever in terms of salary and helping massage that with Tom Brady. But Garoppolo's in San Francisco, and my goodness, what God help you in the NFC West moving forward with Jared Goff, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Jimmy Garoppolo now.
And then what's going to happen with the Cardinals? That's the real question.
That's what I mean. If you're the Cardinals and you've got to figure out a quarterback situation, I mean, look at how bright the future is with two young, very capable quarterbacks.
We called it here first.
There you go. To the Cardinals. All right, what do we got? 49ers, Rams. And the Rams are resting Goff, Gurley, a bunch of guys. So
for me, before the Rams were resting, the score would have been 27-21 Rams with about 70% confidence. So just want to show the difference. Okay, with the rest and with the differences over the past few weeks with Jimmy Garoppolo.
I'd take Garoppolo if they were starting everybody. The man's undefeated.
I love it.
He just tore apart the Jaguars defense. The number one defense in the NFL. He picked them apart like they were nothing.
They also couldn't pressure him.
That's what I mean.
That's a little bit of help with the.
Come on. I don't give Staley credit. You get no credit from me, Staley. It's all Jimmy G.
Totally. Yep, I'm with you. No, so it's come down a lot closer. I have right now it's 22-21 Rams. It's about a 50.25, like literally 50.3%.
So it's right there.
It is a coin flip in this game.
I would assume it's very hard for your simulation to do projections when.
Yeah, with a guy with only the running back replacements rush for 192 yards.
And not to mention a quarterback that's never taken a snap. So
correct, which is why we like legitimately. There's not a lot of it's based on play calling, and then with replacement players, it's very tricky.
Yeah.
However, this will give us a good estimate for the playoffs going forward into depth. So we'll know a lot more going forward.
What I will simply point to.
And by the way, pick up Malcolm Brown in fantasy if you haven't already heard that message.
If you're still playing Week 17. What I will point to is with the picks they have, with the cap space they have, with the culture that they have created in that front office. If you're in a keeper league, man, I'd be keeping Marquise Goodwin. I'd be keeping Jimmy Garoppolo because I have high hopes for that team.
Matt Breida's the Kyle Shanahan special.
Although I wonder where they pick, knowing
fair.
who could be available.
Oh, you mean like Saquon Barkley? Is that what you're thinking? Maybe we've been working together too long.
That's all right, Chiefs Broncos.
Oh, by the way, the Todd Gurley late. We talked about usage on Todd Gurley. I just want to point out. 205 snaps played in the past 4. Lev Bell, 242. So Todd Gurley, we've seen more because we've seen him be like
great.
He has 19 touchdowns. The next closest is 12. So that's like the real difference maker. But realistically speaking, I don't think they're overusing him. I think people are like, oh, they're using him too much. No.
Nice, fine.
You're seeing it because he's scoring touchdowns, and everybody plays fantasy, and you always see who scores a touchdown. He's still like Bell has played more snaps. Zeke, had more rushing first downs.
More snaps in 3 fewer games, by the way.
Exactly. So honestly, I'm not worried about his usage one bit. And if you're a San Francisco fan, the other person, if you have some sort of defensive keeper, keep Reuben Foster. He is really good.
Chiefs Broncos.
Okay, so
Pat Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay. Kansas City comes out on top in my model 56.6% of the time. And the final projected score of 24-21. You know who's good at deep passing?
Who?
Projected to be, and based on everything. I watched all of his college snaps for a game that doesn't even matter. That's how much I love this podcast. I watched Patrick Mahomes deep passing, and
he's got a huge arm.
Thing of beauty.
His footwork, I wouldn't even call it footwork because there's nothing there. I mean, there is no footwork. But my God, he throws?
I think
he can throw a football over that mountain.
We haven't seen him in his reads or do anything all season long. So I think that they've given him a chance to potential. And also, if you see kind of how they've been using Alex Smith and the addition of the deep passing game, there's a chance that in practice and all the reps that they're doing, they've been focusing a lot more on it. So I wouldn't be surprised if his footwork looked a lot better in this game than
what I envision is a huddle, and it's Tyreek Hill, and he says, "You can't overthrow me." And Mahomes says, "Oh, I can overthrow you."
Mahomes' dad was a professional baseball player.
You can't overthrow me. Oh, I can overthrow you. And that's what it's going to be. It's just going to be one 50-air yard pass after another to Tyreek Hill, seeing if he can get underneath it.
And by the way, is it Hunt or Kamara for your offensive rookie of the year? Or someone else? Your O'Roy.
I'd say I'd probably go – boy, that's tough. I think it might still come down to this week.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the Saints win the division, it's probably Kamara. If they don't, because we know the Chiefs won the division, and Hunt has another big game because he'll close strong with these final 3 games after kind of disappearing although Kamara's been more consistent.
I know, right?
I go Kamara.
By the way, both Kamara and Hunt are in my 80 scrimmage and touch people.
Yeah. I would go Kamara.
Okay.
Packers-Lions.
Okay. 24-21 Detroit with a 59.8% confidence. I think that's a big lie, though. That's my gut. No, the math says, I read you what the math says, but You know what happened one time? There's this guy named Matt Flynn, and he stepped in, and he came, and he threw for like 470,000 yards, and he threw for like 5 touchdowns, and he got a lot of money signing with the Seattle Seahawks prior to Russell Wilson, which paved the way for Russell Wilson to be, quote, the underpaid hero that took them. Basically, the Lions are the reason that the Seahawks are so good now. Because if they had not overpaid for Matt Flynn, they would have never had to figure out Russell Wilson. And therefore, all Seattle Seahawks fans should be Detroit Lions fans.
Take it.
Perfect.
All right. Bears-Vikings.
75% confidence in a Minnesota win 26-16.
Yeah, and they have, again, something to play for. The Vikings can still slip out. If they lose and the Panthers win, they can slip out of the number 2 and lose their bye. So against a pretty bad Bear team.
You want to know like a fun stat?
Please.
Okay, so Ingram and Kamara, 15-20 combined rushing yards.
Okay.
Number 2, McKinnon and Murray, 1,193.
How about that?
It's pretty funny.
It is.
And by the way, the Rams are third.
400-yard gap between those two. That's how
it's
dominant
pretty big.
Ingram and Kamara have been.
Again, it's a
now,
huge
granted,
gap.
McKinnon and Murray, Dalvin Cook was there for 4 weeks, and he was dominant.
And by the way, number 3,
back.
Malcolm Brown and Todd Gurley, which I think is hilarious because
Gurley's
Malcolm Brown
dominant.
contributed 192 of those, which is like nothing.
Texans-Colts. It's like the Canseco brothers' home run totals. Or the McGuire brother home run totals, yeah.
53.3% confidence in the Indianapolis Colts in a 23-20 victory. Texans and Colts are number 1 and number 2 in sacks allowed. Colts, 55 sacks. Texans, 52. DeAndre Hopkins, touchdown.
Doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. I mean, it is remarkable what that guy has had to deal with in his career of quarterbacks that throw to him, and yet he continues to put up consistent, dominant numbers. And just thinking of a healthy
Was his catch
Deshaun
better than
Watson.
Odell Beckham Jr.'s, yes or no?
To me, a touchdown's a touchdown,
Better than David Tyree.
I don't care how you catch him as long as you catch him. Well, David Tyree in the Super Bowl.
Right. It had more consequences.
Was
right.
that
was the ultimate because it actually mattered.
That was the greatest of. I'm just pulling up something real quick because I want to make sure I get it right. So even though his passer rating is not great, he's 24th in passer rating at 81.5, and that's just ahead of Flacco, just behind Cam Newton. I'm anxious to see what Indianapolis can get for Jacoby Brissett.
Hey, Jacoby Brissett has been under pressure pretty much his entire every single snap.
That is,
and he's got that thick base. So in the offseason, we'll talk about like projectors for success, and part of success is one of those other things that I hate, like trust the process and defense travels. I also hate the best type of ability is a fail ability. It's true, but I hate it. I hate that saying. So one of the things that's a good projector of availability is if you have like a thick base. So thick knee joints, thick hip joints, thick ankle joints. The thicker your joint, the less likely you are to get hurt. That's a proven fact. So Russell Wilson has thick joints like that too. So obviously Brissett's bigger, but he has those thick joints, which is a good indicator that's a good predictor for him.
He's huge. I mean, he's a
huge.
Big guy. He's a Big Ben type, Phillip Rivers type, 6'3", 6'5", like that range, legit.
He's like
220, 230
Like
pounds.
if you had your iPhone
big.
and you made it just a little bit smaller from Cam Newton, that's more. He's like that.
He's
big.
big.
He's not as big as Cam, but he's like your iPhone, just like proportionally.
I think
just a little bit.
That's one of the trades that Bill Belichick's going to come out on the wrong side of.
Do you think that Jimmy Garoppolo is the other one?
No, because I think that was. I really do believe that was a favor. I think that was you're not sending him to Cleveland. We've been too good to you with Tom Brady, because Don Year's the agent for both. And I think that was, you're going to do what we ask you to do. And you're going to send, because I would imagine Bill probably wanted to keep him. And
Never
he probably
underestimate
wanted to
the power
say,
of
hey,
agents in this business.
I'm willing to. I've cut everybody loose. I'll cut Tom loose. I'll send him to San Francisco, let him live out his days there. But they told him he couldn't. Anyway, point is, way to go, Chris Ballard, and getting Brissett, because I think they're going to be able to flip him maybe for like a high second. Something good. Redskins, Giants. What do we got?
Washington comes out top in the model, 22-19 with a 58% confidence. One positive thing for the Redskins defense: most defensive pressures per game by percentage in the course of the season so far, 34.7%, averaging 12.5 pressures per game. That's ahead of the Rams. It's ahead of Jacksonville. Saxonville. It's ahead of the Seahawks and Philadelphia. That's cool. Good for them.
Good.
didn't mean wins, but
congratulations.
Hey, I'm just going to be happy about something.
I hear you. 3 predictions now. Confidence index, Cynthia.
Okay, so we like a plethora of points here. And remember in the beginning, like the first podcast, it was like always up to 60. Well, we're going to go people who have at least 50.
Okay.
And I think there's going to be more than 50 points scored. Philadelphia, so the 26-25 Philadelphia and Cowboys final score adds up to 51. That's a lot of points. I think Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, people underestimate his ability to throw that deep ball, and Kareem Hunt, is he going to work or not? I think there's going to be a lot of points in that one, 24-21. That means 45. And then the Rams, I think 27-21. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo shows us a lot.
He'll score 48 on his own.
Well, yeah. Well, I think
that rest in D.
I mean, even though it went down to like a closer projected final score, like 22-21, which seems like a lower final score, I think take that 27-21 and kind of you can add those points up accordingly.
Garoppolo shotgun, Breida to his right. 2 receivers left on third down. Takes the snap, looking, pulls the ball down. Garoppolo's going to drag it out to the left. Now fires in the end zone. It's caught for a touchdown. There's the sidearm sling. Touchdown 49ers to Trent Taylor.
Oh, wasn't that sweet music there? That touchdown pass from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trent Taylor. Ted Robinson, I believe, the voice of the 49ers.
He's no Dick Stockton in the Jaguars or whatever it is.
We appreciate each and every one of you sharing this podcast through social media, be it Twitter or Facebook or wherever. Remember, you can subscribe. That makes it easy on you. Have it automatically download to your device of preference, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And if you wouldn't mind, you will help our podcast grow. As, again, this is our first season. You leave us a rating or a review on iTunes. We have our review of the week, and because it is from Punu, 2223, I think it works better if you read it, Cynthia. This is a big-brained individual.
Okay. Ooh, as a researcher in cardiology, whoa, it's really smart, who works with prediction models and newly enshrined football fanatic, I absolutely love this podcast, especially Matt. What Cynthia?
No, it says especially Cynthia's analysis.
No, especially Matt.
And then they felt like they had to put the qualifier. Punu, I don't need your approval. It's okay. I know why people come to this podcast. I'm here to get in the way.
Oh, this is very nice. It's going to make me cry like Dan Quinn ahead of the Super
Go
Bowl.
ahead.
What Cynthia does is really amazing to understand the game at such a deep level and then meaningfully apply the statistics and, most importantly, to make it sound so easy to the listener. That's very nice, considering I couldn't even read that sentence properly. You guys are among my must-listen weekly podcast, and I have obtained very useful fantasy information as well. Great work so far. Keep it up. That's really nice.
We'll try to keep it up, Punu.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing cardiology research. We need you a lot.
Darn right we do. I need my brain to be healthy. See what I did there?
I do.
All right, thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back again next week previewing the wild card weekend of playoff games.